So let's get started today. I'm in the middle of sort of a yoga for runners series. And so this is part 2. I think it's going to be 4, but we've already done tendons and ligaments. And so this one will be all about the muscles and particularly flexibility and mobility. So I'll try to keep it short, but I've got my list of poses that we need to do and get through, and things that might help you today are a blanket that you can fold up or a cushion, something to put under a knee, and blocks. Blocks would be helpful. And if you don't have blocks, then a couch or something to lean on, something to assist you in an upright pose where you need maybe assistance being upright. So without further ado, let's get going on our first stretch, which is a seated forward fold. So we start in Dandasana staff pose with the feet forward, and then we lift up nice and tall. And remember, we don't do, I say it every time just in case, just to be sure, because we don't want to pull the flesh away because it's not good for the tendons. This is about the muscles, but actually it could affect the muscles as well, you know, if you do that enough. So if anything, lifting up and then being completely square so that everything is even and safe, and then reaching forward. So reaching for shins, ankles, or toes. And because we're not targeting the tendons so much today, we're only holding for about a minute, approximately 1 minute. So we don't have to be super warm to do this, but because we're not super warm, just go gentle. We should go gentle anyways, but particularly I'm fairly chilly this morning, so really gentle. And then if you wanted to try to get that body awareness going, see where you feel this stretch. And we're aiming for the belly of the muscle. So it's almost the heart of the hamstrings muscles is actually kind of closer to the knees than it is to the hips. Could be midway, depending on. And just a few deep breaths. Wouldn't you know it's already a minute? It goes by fast. Come on up. Still moving nice and slow, especially when we do those longer holds, which we're not doing today, but still moving nice and slow. The next one is low lunge. So this is where you might need all the supplies. I like my blanket behind the back knee. And I'm gonna get my blocks all in place. So I use these just to hold me up. Oh goodness. Little clumsy this morning. So the knee, left knee on blanket, right foot forward, and lifting up tall. All of you are probably already in this pose waiting for me to get set up. I'm like the slowest person to move into a pose. I don't know why that is. I've also discovered I'm really slow at cleaning. Like it'll take me, I'll be like, I'm going to clean the kitchen now. And an hour later, I'm finishing up thinking, I don't know what took me so long. Few deep breaths. And so the more upright we are, the more intense the stretch. So just trying to feel the front of the back hip. And we'll switch sides. So nice and slow, 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 switching sides. So right knee on the something squishy, left foot forward, lifting up tall as available. So checking in with how those muscles are feeling, trying to find the edge but not push past it. And then a couple deep breaths here. because we're only in here a minute, trying to make it as effective as possible. And so not fidgeting, which is my biggest challenge. And when you're breathing deep, it helps to relax. So especially on every exhale, sinking and melting. And then we'll slowly come on out. And then we'll head into a more intense variation of that one, which is gecko. Or if that's too much for you, just repeat. So we start in the same position, right foot forward in our low lunge. And if you wanted to go further, you can get rid of the blocks here. Actually, I like having a block, but you don't need to. Left hand forward on the floor, and the weight goes forward, and then pop the back toes off the floor. Find those toes with the opposite hand and hold. So 1 minute hold here. This is a fairly intense stretch. I guess I should have said a strap is helpful too. If you're not able to reach the toes, you could use a strap. But if you're using a strap, be really cautious, because our arm is stronger than the leg is flexible. So we don't want to use too much leverage there. Almost done. So trying to find stillness. I say just as much to myself as to everyone else. And then slowly release and switching sides. So left foot forward, right knee back. And I like to have my hand on a block to help me be a little bit more upright. But forward is the trick. I like to flex the back foot until I find the toes. It helps prevent sometimes getting into gecko, we get a hamstrings cramp. And that's because of, the initial cause could be, mild dehydration or something like that, or it could be a vitamin or mineral deficiency, but ultimately it's the muscles are lacking strength. That's a bigger conversation. But if you power through it, like you really kind of force the muscle to bend the leg so you can reach the toes, if the muscle doesn't have that much strength, but you're requiring that much strength of it, it tends to seize up a little bit. So the trick is to keep the foot flexed. And then at the very end, point the toes. That's my little trademark move. Flex the foot and then little point and clasp the toes like a dance. Last few moments here. And release. Okay, so the next one up is shoelaces. And this one, most people, especially runners, need to be up on blocks. Usually 2, actually, and especially men. So I can put mine aside because I suppose that means I'm probably not running as much. It is true, though, if you run a lot, you get more tight. So the easiest way to get into this is from seated. Bending the knees, feet on the floor, left underneath right so that the left knee is facing directly center. Right crosses all the way over left. And then you're trying to get right knee stacked on top of left. And if you are quite flexible, you can move forward and then shimmy the knees together, feet are apart, and then head back. So you could enter this through hands and knees as well, or instead of, but I only recommend that to people who are very flexible or who have done this pose before, because if you're forward and you lean back, we tend to be heavier than we are flexible sometimes, and then you might not be able to control the landing, and then we definitely want to be cautious of the knees. And the hips too. We're not here too long. I usually make you all stay here like 3 minutes. So this one will be nice. We're only here a minute-ish. And then slowly switching sides. So you can start with your sort of thread the needle situation where the right goes under the left, left over top of right, or you can come forward, scooch the knees together, and then sitting back. Just looking at our lineup today of stretches, this is actually a really good morning yoga routine as well, because it's just 1 minute, quick and dirty. I mean, it's not as short as some of our classes have been or could be, but relatively quick to run through a lot of stretches to start your day. Get the circulation going. And breathing deep. And then slowly, slowly, come on out. The next one is everyone's favorite, straddle. So I like to go sideways on my mat, and then we step the feet apart as far as they'll go. And we hold. So this one, you could be up on a blanket or blocks, or you could have the hands behind you lifting up tall. Once you have the mobility, you can start to make your way forward. And just relaxing here, breathing through it. And if there was ever any homework I would give to students, it would be this one, because this is the one we tend to do so rarely, unless someone makes you, like today. But it's one of the most accessible ones. Like when you're watching TV, just hop onto the floor and be in this position. If you're scrolling Facebook in the middle of the day, you could be in this position, technically. So it's a good multitasker. Hint, hint. Last few moments. And then slowly come on out, and then we'll head into fire log. So this one again, unless your hips are, I keep catching glimpses of myself with my hair and it's distracting me. Don't get distracted when you're doing yoga. It doesn't matter what your hair looks like. So fire log, leaning back. So this is the modified way to get into this pose. Right ankle crosses over left knee, and then reaching the chest forward, forward, forward towards the lower leg. And if that feels okay, then we can head into the full posture, which is we scooch that bottom foot in. And then eventually, I'm going to turn kind of kitty corner. The right ankle is over top of the left knee, and vice versa. Knee over ankle, ankle over knee. And there is a tendency for the feet to pull inwards. We want to have them out enough so that your lower legs are parallel. And one of the things that tends to happen is if you're not quite flexible enough, the foot will be over the calf kind of, and it'll sickle, like it'll overstretch the outside of the ankle. So that's why we like to have the ankle supported right on the knee. And you might want to have, you might not need a block or a cushion that's super thick, but you might just want like a corner of a blanket or something, just so that the ankle bone doesn't jam into the knee, or the flesh of the, that kind of thing. Eventually you get used to all of that, right? Bone on bone. And sometimes there's, I've had certain poses that I've worked on where I get bruising. It's a little strange, but then your body gets used to it. Particularly poses like crane pose, where your knees are on your triceps, that one. Let's slowly come on out and switch sides. So leaning back, left ankle across the right knee, and then Heart reaches forward. If that's okay, then you can scooch that bottom foot inward. And eventually trying to have knee over ankle, ankle over knee. And really, really important, as always, the knees are 100% okay. So if they're not, we need to back up, reverse course. And then of course we can have a block beneath the top knee. That will help. And the whole while trying to visualize that stretch happening in the hips, especially when we're doing this so quickly. When we hold this for longer, I'm able to say and communicate all of the little adjustments that we can do and all the things we should be thinking about. But in this one, it's kind of fairly quick. It's a bit more challenging. So yeah, making sure, for sure, that the knees are okay. Not even a little bit, the knees speaking to you. Not allowed to not even a little bit. And if they are, we come out of it. And then if you're like, but I'm not feeling the stretch, it's kind of a trial and error. Situate yourself where you can feel, okay, I do feel the stretch in the hip, not in the knee. You might be leaning forward a little bit. It might be coming out a little bit. It might be having a block beneath that top knee. And then slowly, slowly come on out. And then heading into, let's do downward facing dog. That is kind of a really good stretch for, well, runners for sure, but everyone, always. So starting from hands and knees, the hands are just slightly wider than shoulders width apart, and then we'll tuck the toes under. Feet are parallel, hips width apart, hips go up and back to a big V. So from here, I like to walk it out. I know we're only here for about a minute, but I like to walk it out. And also, one thing that you can do while you're here anyways, looking at your legs, check to see that your knees are pointing forward. If your knees are pointing inward, fix it. Legs are to be parallel. The feet, the knees, so the front of the shins are facing forward, the quadriceps are facing forward. If you want to get the shoulders in there, little bend to the knees, heart reaches towards the feet. If this is too much of a stretch, step the feet apart a little more or bend the knees. Eventually the heels will be on the floor, but if they're not, that's totally okay. We just want to feel that stretch. You might feel it in the calves, you might feel it in the hamstrings. You'll feel it where you need it the most. But it is nice to multitask, I gotta say. So if you're feeling it only in the calves, try bending the knees a little bit so you can feel it in the calves and the hamstrings. And then scooping the belly in, gently, slowly, carefully lower the knees down to the mat and come on out. The next one I don't do very often in class, but I really like it. And that's downward dog at the wall. So that's one that you would want to do if regular downward dog is a bit too challenging, or just anyways, because it's really good. It's different. It's a little bit different. So we'll head over to a wall, if you've got a wall handy, and then placing the hands on the wall, a little wider than shoulders width apart, and then stepping back, back, back until you're in a bit of an L shape. And it might be, you don't want it shorter than an L. You could be exactly an L or step it back a little bit more. So it's a bit of a choose your own adventure here. But here you can really get into the shoulders as well. And if you're feeling it too much in the back, bend the knees. Or same thing as our regular downward dog, where we would step the feet apart a little bit more. And if you're not feeling it enough, you can bring the feet closer together. This one is kind of, I feel like this one's almost more intense than the regular downward dog. So if you need to come out a little bit early, no problem. We're only holding this for about a minute. And come on out. The next one is a calf stretch at the wall. So one leg back and then straightening through that leg. And there's not really much weight on the front foot, it's just there for show and stability. Holding for about a minute. Double check too, just like in our downward dog, that your leg is parallel, well, both legs. But that back leg, the inside of the foot is parallel. And the kneecap is facing forward. Mine likes to tip in a little bit. Few deep breaths. And then slowly switching sides, so just replacing one foot with the other and holding here. And it's interesting too how sometimes one leg is a little more flexible than the other. So just finding the edge, not pushing past it. And then slowly come on out and we'll head back to the mat for our last stretch, actually. So this is meant to just be like a quick little run through so you feel lots of range of motion, ready for your day. Leaning all the way back, we'll head into twisted roots or just a mild stretch. So you could do a two-legged stretch. Either way, arms in a T position, palms facing down. We'll lift and scooch the hips over to the right as the knees move over to the left. So for a milder stretch, the knees are together. For a more intense stretch, twisting up those legs. And then to complete the stretch, we look over to the right. And then scooping the belly in, press the low back into the floor. And we'll square everything up between sides, so hug the knees into your chest. Little rock side to side for Uttanasana. And other side, so arms in a T position, palms facing down. We lift and scooch the hips over to the left as the knees move over to the right. And as always, it's important to keep both shoulders on the floor. I know my one shoulder likes to try to come up off the floor, so it's a focused energy to keep it on the floor. And we'll scoop the belly in, press the low back into the floor, and then we'll square everything up, hugging both knees into your chest and a little rock side to side. From here, let's roll over onto our right side and just pause for a moment. And then slowly press yourself all the way up to a comfortable cross-legged seated position. And lifting up nice and tall, hands to the knees. Just wanted to say a couple final words, which is thank you so much for joining me today. And if you are doing this sequence for running, just be aware this is not meant to be a specific warm-up or a cool down, but to be done separately from running. And that's all I have to say about that. Have a really, really good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Namaste.